A lot has been said about small towns in Saskatchewan. Over the years, they've been laughed at and loved. Small towns have always played an integral role in the life of this province, but the 1980s have not been kind to them. Changing times and changing priorities have dealt them a hard blow. Many have died, and many more are dying. Still, the majority survive. Tonight we visit one of these small towns to find out why it survives, and why the people there are satisfied with a lifestyle they would like to see left alone.
Dad, Stephanie's here. Can I borrow your car?
Well, if you promise not to drive too fast, and no wheelies, loopies, or skids. You promise?
I promise.
Okay. You have it back by 8 o'clock sharp, all right?
Thank you.
McDonald's Fastmax. Just pull them back and watch them go. Collect a different one each week. 69 cents each with any purchase.
It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's.
Here to go for a little spin.
13 CJME presents a family fantasy, Disneyland.
When you wish upon a star.
Listen, play the Disney quiz to win with Air Canada and 13 CJME, Destination Disneyland. You could take your family to Disneyland's 30th anniversary celebration. Listen to win.
Herbert, Saskatchewan, population 1,000. A 2-hour drive down the Trans-Canada Highway west of Regina. A small town coming awake for a special occasion. It is Heritage Day in Herbert. The school children are being let out of class early. Costumes will be the order of the day. Everyone is heading for the fairgrounds. The town is trying to recreate something that for many adults is only a memory. An old-fashioned, fun day for everyone, young and old alike. It is important to these people. Their sense of community says this is the kind of thing that is necessary to give their children an understanding of who they are and where they've come from. Herbert is a town that appears fairly secure in its own identity. There's a sense of community here that is so often missing in larger centers. It's a comfortable feeling where everyone knows everyone, where you don't have to worry about the children because there's always someone looking out for them. Herbert is what many people imagine small town living to be like, what they possibly remember from their own youth, but have lost somewhere along the way.
Our families have always lived here. It's home. It always has been home, and I suppose it always will be home no matter where we'd go.
Jerry and June Boer are typical of many of the people who live in Herbert. Satisfied, with no great desire to live anywhere else.
Before we were married, I worked a few places here and there for winters and stuff, but it was never home. Like Herbert is home, you know.
Always came back.
That says a lot about the town and the people living here. And it also says something about the kind of feeling you have about living in a small community in general.
You know, you walk down the street, there's very few people you don't say hello to, that you don't know them well enough to say hello to. Meet them at the post office or the coffee shop or wherever, and you sit and talk no matter who it is, whether they're half my age or twice my age. It doesn't make that much difference.
It's that kind of feeling that brought Bill and Marlene Parley to the decision of keeping their family in Herbert. Bill had been the local bank manager here, but when it came time for a transfer, he turned it down.
When you're in a position where your employer moves you around all the time, which there's lots of them, it takes a little while for a person to get acclimatized or to fit into the community. And if we had been moved after we'd been here 2 or 3 years, probably wouldn't have thought twice about it, you know. But as we had been here from 68 to 74, I guess we just felt that this was maybe home and didn't look forward to leaving.
A quality of life simply too good to give up. Something the Parleys felt they wouldn't find in the big city.
You don't need to worry particularly about vandalism or property damage or that. It's not uncommon to go away for a weekend and leave just about anything sitting in the yard. You don't worry too much about locking doors in a town like this. It's just easy going, quiet kind of life.
How'd your day go?
Heritage Day festivities are in full swing. There seems to be enough happening to keep everyone's interest. The wet sponge throw to the bubblegum chewing contest. From kite flying to musket loading, the day seems to be going well. It's like a gigantic neighborhood block party, and interesting to see how easily everyone gets along. Maybe it's the small town, but there is a noticeable interplay between the generations of young and old in Herbert. Many families have been here for 2 or 3 and even 4 generations. Anna Redikoff is an example, a resident for over 60 years. She has lived long enough to see her children's families raising their own.
I have never felt that there was a big generation gap. My great-grandchildren call me Nanny because they have grandmothers, and sometimes when I go past the schoolyard here, there are a whole line of kids will come and say, "Hi, Nanny."
Now, are they all your
They're
great-grandchildren?
not my great-grandchildren, but they have kind of adopted me through my great-grandchildren.
In a small town like this, there is a sense of identity and belonging that all too often gets lost in the shuffle of city life. Feelings that keep people here all their lives. Memories that draw them back after a lifetime. Betty Hall brought her husband here to retire after being away from her hometown for nearly 40 years.
It really seemed to me sometimes that it had stood still all the years since I left. The school bell rang every morning at 9, and the curfew went at 9 p.m. at night, and all the children had to be off the streets. And it was almost like going back in time for me. And even though my schoolmates, many of them were still here, even though they had changed and I had changed, it seemed to me that we just picked up where we had left off.
Burger King realizes that the competition isn't exactly overjoyed that we've improved the Whopper. Yes, they're less than thrilled that the new Whopper has more beef than Big Mac or Wendy's Single and beat both for best taste. And we expect them to be just as happy with the new Whopper meal combo. Whopper, large fries, and medium soft drink for $2.99. Of course, even Burger King can't torment the competition forever. This is a limited time offer.
Aren't you hungry for Burger King now?
You know, most people think Mark's Work Warehouse is just for work. But if you ask me, it's for the good times, too.
We've got the styles, we've got selection, too. We'll help you look your best in all you do. For work or play, we've got it all for you. Mark's Work Warehouse, more than just great workwear.
For an afternoon of explosive CFL football, join CTV this Sunday. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers host the BC Lions, live on CTV.
Sybil Shepherd is too hot for any man to handle.
I love my husband.
He can't even satisfy you. Don Johnson, is he the one to tame her?
What you do to my wife?
Sybil Shepherd, Don Johnson, The Long Hot Summer.
And our new governor's table, stainless steel cookware from the Bay.
Morris, you married a spendthrift.
Look, Ma, it's 40% off an 8-piece set. Regular $199.98 now, $119.98.
$80 off. Morris, you married a genius.
Is that all it costs at the Bay?
40% off aluminum sandwich base, a 25-year warranty.
And a bonus butter warmer with the set.
You know, I never liked the fridge over there.
Is that all it costs when you shop at the Bay?
That's all?
Herbert has been called a retirement town, and it is without a doubt in many ways. There is a large proportion of older people living here. Today, one of them is being honored. 100-year-old Helena Defer has been chosen as the town's heritage citizen.
Now, you know, there are some other people around that have been here for a long, long time. But I don't believe there's anyone else that shares in the twofold record of having lived here for so many years and being that age.
We do have a lot of retired farmers that prefer to retire in a smaller town rather than going to cities, and rather than leaving their homes and their families and going to the exotic sunspots, they prefer to just retire in a small town.
Bill Redekop is the mayor of Herbert.
Our population is now about exactly what it was 50 years ago. So we haven't gained that much, but where so many towns have totally gone to pieces and become ghost towns, we have maintained our status here.
And that status has been maintained totally because of agriculture. Without that agriculture production and the services that go with it, the town would probably not be around today.
We have no other industry here. We do have the services that we provide in the town, which at the present time are providing employment for something like 100 people. But it's all here because of agriculture.
And while the town itself has never looked better, business in the community has definitely seen better days. Main Street is now only a shadow of its former self.
Back in the 30s and early 40s, I guess, when I can remember, we had 7 grocery stores, a couple of hardware stores, livery barn, of course, and now we're down to just 2 grocery stores.
Doug Francis is a local businessman and lifetime resident. He blames the proximity of swift current for many of the town's business problems.
I guess with the new highways and the newer cars, and people seem to want to go into the malls to visit. You get into Swift Current now on a Thursday night, and you meet a lot more of your neighbors than you do on Main Street in Herbert, actually. It's a shame, but I guess it's just one of those things that happen.
She takes my mixed mash and makes it into a nice looking ad.
One thing that has remained constant through all the boom and bust cycles is the newspaper, the Herbert Herald. Since 1911, the ownership has changed hands many times. The paper has always remained. The present owner is Kelsey Adam.
There's always something going on, and in a small town, it's news that won't make the headline on the national news or anything, but it's something that to the people are important, something like figure skating carnival or a piano recital for the local kids. It's something that's on a smaller basis, and I know it's hard for someone in a larger city to imagine something like an old-time fair being a very popular event, but it's something smaller that appeals to the smaller town people. It's usually a matter of not of having enough stories. It's having, you know, exactly how much time you can spend, because there are so many little things that are important to the people here.
Most important consideration here is keeping their town alive. They know they have a retirement town reputation, but they also realize that to stay viable, they must have young people. The lifeblood of any community this size has to be its young people.
I do not see too much of a change in the structure of the old and the young in the community. I think the balance has pretty well been set and is going to maintain fairly constant.
People seem to keep staying around. In fact, a lot of younger people are staying around the town than used to be.
For Rod Francis, what he'd been looking for ended up to be in his own backyard.
Well, I went to school in Moose Jaw for a while, and then I went to Regina and took a few trips here and there, and then I decided to move to Calgary and get a job, and seemed like the thing to do at the time, and so that's what I did.
Why'd you come home?
Well, first of all, I was offered partnership in my dad's business, so I came back for that, but it is, actually nice to be home because there's lots of things to do around here. You can pretty well as much as you can in the city. And it's actually a nicer place to live as far as I'm concerned.
No, you're skipping.
You're skipping.
Oh, shoot.
Jenny Kaler and her family live in town. Her husband, Wes, has a business in Moose Jaw and is away most of the week. Herbert is home for Jenny. For the sake of the children, she's pleased to be around her parents and grandmother.
We moved back so we could raise our kids in a small town. We were living just outside Winnipeg before we moved here, and we just were more comfortable raising the kids. The crime rate's so high in the city, it's nice to be able to let them ride their bikes without worrying where they are and go to the park and school ground to play, and just not really, the parents of the kids that they're playing with.
Generations of one family have been raised in small towns like this, in large part due to this feeling of security. Now it's helping to keep some and bring others back. A continuation of this security will ensure the future of the town.
Like they were saying in church the other day, the healthiest sign of a good church is if they have the babies born in the congregation. And I guess that is so true.
It's time for fall savings at Co-op. Winter's on the way, so shop now for these energy-wise values to help save on heating costs. 3M window kits are easy to install and shrink tight to seal out winter drafts for as little as $2.99. The RCR threshold seal keeps winter outside your door for only $2.99. And shop for CGE silicone seals. There's one for every need at the Super Saver price. 300 ml tubes, just $3.99 each during the fall savings event at Co-op. Yours for value, yours for service.
People come first at IGA.
Shop IGA for this week's Super Savers. Gold Seal Pink Salmon, 213 grams, only 99 cents with one filled Super Saver card. Dole's Pineapple, sliced, crushed, or chunked, 540 milliliters, only 49 cents with one filled Super Saver card.
You're the one who makes our day. Look at you, you're number one. People come first at IGA.
Be watching this weekend for the return of the Prairie Farm Report. In our first show of the new season, irrigation farming is featured.
A farmer must be very conscientious of the fact that when he is putting out an irrigation system, it has to be matched to his soils or he'll be getting into trouble. You can't go to an auction sale and come home with a machine and just park it on your land. That doesn't work.
That's irrigation farming this weekend on the Prairie Farm Report.
The season premiere of the Prairie Farm Report, Sunday.
Excuse me.
Mr. B, sir.
Why is it that our customers rent movies here rather than the video shop down the way?
Well, sir, at Byright Drugs, we have the best selection of the latest title movies. We offer midweek specials that you don't need a membership to take advantage of. Byright Drugs opens early and closes late 7 days a week in locations all across town, and our racks are always full, sir.
What about VCR rentals?
We only rent RCA VCRs. Nothing but the best for Byright Drugs customers, sir.
Keep up the good work, son.
Like many towns its size, religion has an important role to play in the day-to-day life of Herbert. Historically, a number of religious groups settled in the area, with the majority being Mennonite.
Would you call Herbert a highly religious community?
Yes, I would say that it is, at least
from my viewpoint in looking at some of the other communities, I would say it would be. I think it's probably becoming a less religious community than it has been in the past.
Pastor Jacob Pauls of the Mennonite Brethren Church, somewhat concerned that over his years in town, he's seen sports take the front row seat away from religion.
The physical aspect is important, and I don't want to downplay that, but when it somehow takes first priority, and very often people will, if they can't be at a church service, they will say, well, I can't let the team down. And my sort of inside response is, well, you did let down a bigger team. You know, those people at the church, and I believe that at a church, you know, each church is a team, as it were, and so that we need to support each other in that way. And there are times for activity, and I think there are also times for worship.
There has always been a Mennonite influence in Herbert, but in the past it hasn't been as strong as it is today.
And
Betty Hall tells a story about a Mennonite friend from her childhood.
And I can remember a very close friend of mine who had applied for a job in Herbert in her late teens, not wanting to leave Herbert, not wanting to go to Vancouver or to the east, as so many of our young people did. And she didn't get the job, and she said to me with bitterness, Betty, if you're not English in this town, you're nothing. And I said, oh, that's not so. But I knew it was, and I felt badly about it. And all these many years later, probably 40 years later, maybe more, my youngest son applied for a job at the local co-op a couple of years ago, and as a gas jockey, and he didn't get the job, and he came home, and I sympathized with him, and he said, oh, Mom, he said, you know, if you're not a Mennonite in this town, you're nothing. And I laughed, and I said, James, that's wonderful news to me. It's gone full circle.
An auction for Pastor Pauls. After 14 years in Herbert, he is leaving. A large part of the town has turned out. A satisfying feeling for Pastor Pauls to see this kind of support. He will miss this warmth. A warmth he doubts would have been present in a larger center.
In a larger community, it's sort of everyone for himself, and the warmth may have been within the church. But it's very difficult to move on beyond the church in a public way. Because the coffee shop isn't the same in a large community as it is in Herbert. You know, you go into the coffee shop and you sort of know whom you're going to meet there. You can have coffee with this person or with the other person. And, you can curl with people from the community, and you know, they get to know you more than just the preacher in the pulpit, and sort of at arm's length. They start seeing that you're really human, and they sort of relate to you as a human being rather than somebody who is, as it were, very religious and so on.
If you were to ask Rad Hall, he would tell you that Herbert is the last place he ever thought he would end up in. A big city boy, displaced, as it were, into small-town Saskatchewan. Here for retirement with his wife, Betty.
I find the pace a lot slower. It's not the rush, the bustle. You have to be, get through that line, get to that post office, get to the, you know, and push and shove. You just talk to your neighbor, and the time passes, and you don't worry about it.
This laid-back lifestyle is something he's had to get used to.
I enjoy it to a certain extent, but as I say, I've got to get back to those city streets once in a while and pound that pavement, and get hassled in the crowds. But for 99% of the time, I enjoy the easy life.
You can almost feel the sense of contentment in this town. People know they've got a good thing and aren't at all reluctant to tell others about it. That goes for adults and children as well.
It's just the right size, you know most of the people.
That's pretty important?
Yeah.
How come?
Because you don't go on the street, you don't meet anyone you don't know. There's less traffic and you know everyone. You can trust them. If there's ever an emergency, then you wouldn't have to worry about where you went.
You can bike ride a lot, and you can go almost anywhere in town with your bike.
Well, for its size, there's a skating rink and a swimming pool,
That's what.
Just the right size for you?
Yeah. When you go out in the street, you don't have to worry about running into somebody you don't know.
You think that's pretty important? Why?
Because then you don't have to worry about being grabbed by somebody.
Do you worry about that sometimes?
Like when I'm at my grandma's, she lives in a big town. And like when you walk down to the mall or something, it's sort of scary because you're not too sure who you're going to meet.
Herbert, like many small towns, has been sheltered from a lot of the negative aspects that shape our lives. Comfortable with a lifestyle that could easily be taken for granted. Celebrations like this Heritage Day are important. It helps to reinforce their identity, and it gives them something to pass on.
It's very, very important that we keep our young people, because 10 years down the road, there would be no Herbert, or very, very little.
The future of the town is a concern that touches everyone. There are a number of factors working against them. The town is determined to survive.
If the merchants had a little bit more of a positive outlook sometimes, and instead of getting that doom and gloom, I think we could keep these small communities going. It just seems like some of the communities survive, and it just has to do with outlook on life, or outlook on business.
Jerry and June Boer have been a part of this community all their lives and don't have any plans for changing now or in the future.
I think the town, the people, it'll always be here, but the business part of the town seems to be going downhill.
The basics of what you really need is all here. And then once you start losing those basics, then I would begin to worry about it.
Really, as far as people living here, I think it'll be here for a long time. I think it's been well kept up. It's a nice town.
Herbert is probably one of the luckier small towns in Saskatchewan. It has a larger population base than most, and this alone should guarantee its survival. Right now, the town is getting ready for its 75th anniversary 2 years down the road. And despite a somewhat uncertain future, there is no doubt here the town will be around to celebrate 100. Good night.
The Army produced the perfect soldier until they discovered he had a conscience. Now the Army has to destroy him before he destroys the Army. Joe and the Colonel, a CKTV movie special, tomorrow at 8.
Action with Miami Vice, tonight at 10.